Okay, so bear with me as I click here. All right, so our final long-range cause um, of World War One is comes with the formation of what were called the alliance systems. Right, and because of all of the tension that existed in Europe, and because of some of the national ties that existed, some countries were just naturally friendly with each other. We began to see a teaming up of sorts here to try to balance power, to reduce or diminish the threat for some countries of war being dominated if a war was to break out. So there become two competing alliances here. On the one side, we have the Triple Entente, which you can see is comprised mainly of Britain, France, and Russia. Now, Serbia we tack in here, and we'll talk more about their place at a later date. But they have sort of an alliance here on their own with Russia. But the main three are these guys here. On the other side, we have the Triple Alliance here, or sometimes called the Central Powers. And primarily, we're talking about Germany and Austria-Hungary. And now Italy is a member of the Triple Alliance leading up to World War One, but they do sort of a double take leading up to the war, and we'll see that they're going to drop out of the Triple Alliance, and eventually or inevitably they end up fighting on the side of the Triple Entente in this war, with an agreement they sign with Britain. All right, but as Italy drops out, we see them being replaced here by this old empire here called the Ottoman Empire, which is coming out of present day Turkey, so sort of disconnected from Europe. We'll talk more about their situation at a different time. All right, so we have this idea here of these powerful empires teaming up to protect each other's interests. Now, the arrangement here in the alliance system is interesting. All right, it is what was called a defensive alliance, and essentially the idea of the defensive alliance was that if any one of these countries is threatened by an opposing country, the entire alliance would come to their defense. So let's just say, for argument's sake here, if Germany threatens Russia, Russia would have Britain and France to count upon to come to its defense. Now, Germany would know this, and the idea would be, of course, that if you're Germany, taking on one country is feasible. You can win those sorts of fights. But if you take on Russia, for example, and you know that both Britain and France are now going to jump in, you're not likely going to win that fight. 3-on-1 fights aren't winnable fights. So this was the thinking here, was that if we team up in alliances and we agree to defend each other, then no one's likely going to threaten an opposing alliance country, because the consequence would be a war, and a lopsided war at that. So the idea here was that this should discourage war. But there was a problem, though. What if a country was so bold to say, you know what, too bad, I'll take them all on. And let's say a country does choose to be aggressive towards a competing alliance member. Well, we have this sort of snowball effect. All right, now all of a sudden we got three countries, let's say, involved, and they now are going to antagonize Germany. Well, if Germany initially, let's say they're the ones that are stirring the pot, and invariably they will be in some form, what happens once these countries come together and say, no, now we're going to threaten you? Well, Germany's going to look at its alliance members and say, well, I'm being threatened now, so you have to come to my defense. So the problem here with the alliance systems is that if there can't be any one-on-one fights. As soon as one country threatens another country, immediately it becomes an alliance force that then becomes an alliance force against an alliance force. And when we look at these countries and we think about them in the context that they were empires, when we talk about Britain getting involved, we're not just talking England. We're talking all of the empires going to be called to get involved. And the same with all of France, the same with all of Russia, the same with all of these players. And when we think of it that way, we can see here, I think, how the possibility of a world war now exists.